Greetings, my name's Jeff Johnston. This video is to take a look at the Dracast model DRWF-FL-1500B LED focusing Fresnel lamp. You can find all kinds of videos online that look at the characteristics and features and construction and so on this guy. My interest as a person interested in lighting is more, what does the light do when it's coming out of the lamp? That's what we're going to take a look at. This is a totally unscientific look. This is not going to be color temperature meters and foot candles and lumens and all that good jazz. This is just strictly, we're going to be shining the light against the inside of my garage door, big professional studio here, and taking a look at what it does, spot, flood, barn doors, and so on. Now, Dracast, in addition to the lamp and the barn doors, includes this nifty little silver-lined light ring that goes over the front of the lamp to avoid stray light and so on. Looks a little bit like a really heavy-duty garter belt, but that's a discussion for another time. Anyway, the light is set up, we're running it at 100% of output, set up for 5500 degrees Kelvin, the same as the camera, which is a Canon C100. And we'll also demonstrate the dimming and so forth, spot flood and all that. To measure the light output, we're using my old Sekonic flash meter L358 model. I have no idea if this thing is calibrated correctly or not. If nothing else, it gives us some kind of basic ideas, something to look at, basis for comparison for the light output. All right, to get started here, turn the light on. Turned on the fan, which allows you to go all the way up to 100% power. If you don't use the fan, it only stays at 50% power to avoid overheating. And the fan, by the way, is extremely quiet. So we'll aim this porker at the wall here. And most of the illumination here is coming from a Kino Flow 4-light fixture. I'm going to shut that off. The camera, incidentally, is set up at ISO 640, and we're shooting at f4, I believe, something like that. The fixture is 12 feet away from the wall. It's at full spot right now, and it looks like we have roughly a 5 foot wide blob approximately. I'm measuring this at a 30th of a second, and like I said, ISO 640. Right here in the middle of the blob, we show roughly 11.3. Part way out, down to about f8.06. Way out on the edge here, 5.63. So I'm going to crank in the barn doors here, and we'll see what kind of effect it has. Okay, right now the barn doors are snugged in, so we got a hole roughly so big in the middle, and you're not getting a lot of barn door effect here yet, but I suppose that might be standard for a spot on a light like this. I'm going to open the barn doors up, and we're going to crank it back around to wide angle, and we'll see what happens then. All right, full flood spreads the light out a little bit. You can see that the light goes all the way over to this side of the garage door, and you can't see it probably, but it goes all the way to close to the other side of the door as well, which means it's 14 feet wide, something along those lines, depending on how much of the light you want to use and how far out you want to go. About 14 feet. And once again, here at the middle of the blob of light, roughly. Now we're showing f4, 4.07 actually. A little bit out to the edge here, 4.06. A little farther, 4.5. Yeah, 4.6. I'm going to come in and angle the barn doors in, see how that works here. Okay, now we're down to opening about so big in the middle of the barn doors. You can see you have a nice cut effect here. There's some concern about multiple shadows when you're using a fixture with LEDs that consist of a bunch of small LEDs. And I'm going to come in here closer to try and illustrate this, but you can just barely, well, it's really hard to see. There's the light cuts off up here at the edge of the door, and I suppose if you look real closely, you might have good enough eyes to be able to see something like a little bit of gradation, but I don't. Now when you move the light, it's possible to see a little bit of grading in here, but it's not bad. It's a pretty clean spot of light. All right, we'll open the barn doors up again, and I'm going to set my somewhat ersatz wood frame homemade, flag up here. See what kind of effect it has to have the flag a little bit farther away than the edge of the barn doors. If you look at this very closely, you can see that there are a couple of there's a little bit of gradation here, a soft fuzzy edge, and then a clean cutoff on this side of it. Flag is 4 feet or so away from the wall at this point. Now when you look at something like your hand shadow over here, again it's a pretty darn good edge. Looks good enough for what I do anyway. Just for drill, I'm also going to run through the color temperature and fading up and down. 75%. That's around 50. It's 25% there. And that is 1%. At 1%, of course, we don't have an awful lot of, we show F1. I'm going to crank that back up to 100% and 4450 K, 35, and there's 3200. Boy, that looks mighty funny at this point, but 3200 K. Well, in my opinion, I think this does a pretty good job for the price. Now the flood to spot takes about 5.5 turns of the crank, but that's not a big deal, I don't think anyway. Light's been running for about an hour now, more or less. I'm going to use my little Fluke infrared thermometer to take some measurements here just for fun. Lower part of the case looks like 81 degrees. Upper part here, also 81 degrees. If I look inside at the reflector for the light housing, it says 88. It says 99 degrees on the cooling fins in here. Reflector, yeah, 91 degrees on the ring around the lens rather. Straight into the lens says 107 degrees. I can live with that. The Dracast lights, of course, are available everywhere. This one seems to be a pretty decent addition to my kit. I kind of like it.